Joining me now with more on this from Honolulu is Todd James. He's the national spokesperson for the American Red Cross. Thanks so much for making time this morning to chat, Todd. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Chanel.
So let's start with talking about the current state of search and rescue efforts. Where are we right now?
Well, the search and rescue efforts being conducted by the brave men and women who do that, I think they're working their hardest out there, and we wish them the best of luck. Right now, our main focus is on providing shelter and food and comfort to those that have been affected and driven from their homes. We've been doing that since the fires began, and we'll continue doing it as long as needed.
So let's talk about what the situation is like there on the ground for people who are there working, those humanitarian workers. Are there any challenges in getting aid to people who need it right now?
There are always logistical challenges in a disaster like this, and I think that probably a little more so than normal because of the situation of being located on an island. But yeah, it is difficult getting into the areas that have been affected at times. But our teams and the many first responder teams that are out there offering help work very hard to make sure that we can get help to everybody that needs it, and letting everybody know that if they need shelter, if they need a meal, if they need help, that we are there. They can come to us at any time, and we're going to make sure they get taken care of.
And obviously, we're hearing, Todd, housing is one of the biggest issues. What are you hearing in terms of what people need?
Well, what people need right now, for the most part, a lot of the folks who live in the communities that have been affected by these fires, they want to get back, and they want to see what's going on with their homes. But right now, we got to make sure that they have a safe place to stay, that they have access to meals, to health care. We have our disaster health teams that are in the shelters, and our disaster mental health teams with the emotional support they're going to need, because this is such a traumatic event. This community, this entire state has been affected by this disaster, and it is going to be a very long road to recovery for everyone.
I wonder as well, Todd, if you can speak a bit about how your crews, how your teams prepare to help in a moment like this.
Well, for the Red Cross, we are planning and preparing every day. Our volunteers, our disaster teams are constantly putting in work to make sure that we are ready when something happens. As in this case, as soon as the fires began, the Red Cross volunteers on Maui sprang into action and started so we could get a shelter open. And as a disaster grows, as this one did, we put out the word for more help, and people that have been trained to handle a situation like this, they head wherever they are needed.
We're seeing, people across the country sort of come together to try to help. Oprah, we know, is a part-time resident of Maui. She's been visiting with people in shelters there, Todd, and she spoke to CBS Morning's Tony DeCopel a bit about the spirit of the people on Maui right now. Take a listen.
They're still just grateful to have each other. So it's really, the aloha spirit is about community and about family. And we've seen this here in ways that, most people never get to imagine what that really looks like.
Todd, we're hearing so much, right, about that Maui spirit. Talk to us a bit about what you're hearing, what your crews are seeing on the ground when it comes to how people are coming together in this really horrible moment.
I would echo those sentiments. I've heard a lot since I've arrived here about the aloha spirit, and it's a spirit of love, of respect, of welcome. And we have been welcomed with open arms. And what I'm seeing with these communities that are pulling together to help each other, to help their neighbors and their friends and their family, without a doubt, it is something to witness how this community, how, again, this entire state is coming together to help those folks.
Let's bring in Jeremy Greenberg. He is the Director of Operations at FEMA. Thank you so much for being with us. I want to start with just talking about what makes this situation so unique. As we just heard from our reporter on the ground, this is an isolated, this is an island. And so what are the challenges that you're facing in responding to this situation?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me on. First and foremost, I want to take a minute to offer our condolences and sympathy to those who are impacted by this devastating fire. The story you were just covering, and throughout this incident, you can see that this fast-moving fire just devastated the community, and know that the entire federal government will be there to support the state throughout the operation. As far as the biggest challenge is making sure that the state of Hawaii has everything that they need, not only in the initial search operations, but as we move into the recovery and rebuilding of the community. To support that, FEMA has over 250 people on the ground working with the state through search and rescue ops, as well as getting people registered for individual assistance.
And while they are still trying to search and recover those that may have perished in all of this, I imagine that slows things down. But do you have any sense then of how much longer recovery efforts will go on, and where are people expected to stay on the island until that mission at least is complete?
So FEMA and the interagency have deployed a variety of different capabilities to work in tandem. So first, the search and rescue teams that have come in that are making their way through the devastation to make sure that they are supporting the state in the recovery or their search operations. And then we have a variety of different capabilities for individual assistance and public assistance. I'd like to offer a number for our disaster assistance program, which is 1-800-621-3362 and disasterassistance.gov, as well as the Red Cross at 1-800-733-2767. These numbers provide access to critical services that survivors need to jumpstart that recovery, whether they need some initial cash or they need to get registered for temporary housing, such as hotels or other area hospitality that's been set up to support the folks impacted by this disaster.
All right, and Jeremy, we are keeping that number up on our screen in case anybody wants to reach out. Let's talk about funding. Does FEMA have the funding to take on this big of a task?
Absolutely. The Federal Emergency Management Agency is just one agency across the federal government that's accessing funds that are available to support the state, not only in the initial response operations, but the long-term recovery operations that will be required for this type of incident.
We know Congress is obviously getting ready to consider a new supplemental funding request from the White House. We'll see if the White House adds anything to that in the wake of this. Jeremy, let me just clarify one thing before we let you go. You were saying people on the island who may need cash to help reimburse them for where they're staying right now. There had been some reports over the weekend of people who had to check into some of the, for lack of a better term, fancier resorts on the island. If you're a family who had no choice but to do something like that, is that the kind of reimbursement locals can anticipate, that if they had to ring up hotel bills at the only available places that may have been very expensive, FEMA will step in and help reimburse?
So FEMA is working directly with the state of Hawaii on the initial lodging and mass care plan. I would encourage everybody first to register. That's that critical first step. And then our personnel can work with the state to make a determination on who best provides that financial assistance for the people impacted by the disaster.
And are you envisioning a need at some point for like tent cities there across Lahaina or other parts of Maui?
We'll work with the state of Hawaii, realizing that Lahaina and the other impacted areas are very close-knit communities, and we will support whatever the best decision is for those people impacted by this disaster.
Justin Prouty is the owner of Minute Medical Urgent Care. He joins us now. Thank you so much for being here amid what I imagine is a pretty stressful and busy time for all of you there. Give us a sense for those on the mainland who are looking at our neighbors in Hawaii and wondering what we can do to help, or what is needed. What is the biggest need right there on the ground right now?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. So on the medical side, we've sort of got through the acute stage as quickly as possible, sprinted in, really tried to stabilize the community. That seems to be going pretty well. The next step is sort of organization and communication. Right now, a lot of people are looking for medication, whether they lost it in the fire or they're out. And that's been a big push for the medical community right now, getting out into that community, finding the people that need their medication, having them come to medical hubs. As of today, there will be a pharmacy set up where people can get their medication. All the providers can come to them and get medications within an hour. So that seems to be moving forward. But really what needs to happen now is all these groups that have gone in and been there to help need to come together and organize and communicate with each other so that we can move forward in a progressive manner that's most helpful for the community.
And so you're setting up these pharmacies, and we're also seeing video of boats coming ashore and people taking supplies off. What else are you doing to find the people who are in the most need and that need care?
Well, a lot of those people are in shelters. A lot of them remained in their homes because they were afraid to leave, and because maybe they couldn't get back in or they didn't have gas, that type of thing. So there is a lot of door-to-door work to be done. There's a lot of community providers coming from off island that are doing that door-to-door work. It's a big task, but it seems to be coming along.
And we're hearing incredible stories of residents helping other residents on the ground there. Are there concerns, though, that support could wane in the coming days or weeks? What would help sustain that interest and concern for you all?
Yeah, I think we've got through the sprint stage, and now it's a marathon, and we're going to need help. And right now, it feels like there are a lot of medical providers in the mix, but I think that's going to wane as people get exhausted and have to go back to their normal jobs, maybe on the other side of the island, that type of thing. So there will be need for that support going forward in the weeks and months ahead. This is going to be a very long process.
A very long process. And Justin, I'm curious, from your perspective, you're there on Maui. What do you want the rest of the world, the rest of the country to know? What is the message that needs to go out right now?
I think just keep us in your minds and hearts, and please send aid as much as you can. There are a lot of organizations out there that are willing to help, and Maui is going to need help.